Welcome everyone to our summer career series. Today we will be talking about Undocu-career options, and I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today. Her name is Karla Reyes, and she is a founder of Dreamco Institute. Karla, thank you so much for being with us today, and take it from here.
Great, thank you, Nicole. I am so excited that everyone got a chance to join and is taking the time to participate in this. Thank you. And also, I am really excited to share this information with all of you. I know that you probably are going to have a lot of questions. I'm going to go over a lot of information. Hopefully that'll be practical and useful for your students and for the students that are participating today, for you to get started on your career. And so I'll share a little bit about myself in a minute, but I do want to encourage you to ask questions. Sometimes if we wait till the end of the presentation, you might forget. And also, ask anything that comes up. Please do let me know if you have any questions in the chat. So let's get started. Welcome, warm welcome. I want to start by sharing a little bit about myself so that you know where I'm coming from with all of this information. I'm Karla. I'm a trainer, advisor, certified professional coach, and CEO. I was formerly undocumented. I came to the US when I was 9. I'm 35 now. You can do the math. And I was also a DACA recipient. And so I was undocumented until 2019 when I got married. And my husband petitioned for me. And so I was born in Mexico, raised in San Jose, and attended Evergreen Valley College. So I'm a product of community college and San Jose State University, and eventually Mills College to earn my MBA. I've worked in different organizations, both as an employee and consultant. My first professional job, I didn't have a degree yet, and it was at Evergreen Valley College, and they hired me to start the first Dreamer Center, or Undocumented Student Center, at a college, at a community college. So this was in 2007. And so that was my first experience as an entrepreneur, because I was undocumented. They couldn't hire me as an employee, but I really wanted to do the work, and there was like a huge need in the community because we had a large population of undocumented students, and that needed to be served. And that was the first opportunity that I got, which actually led me to learning about consulting and about how undocumented students could actually own businesses, specifically consulting practices. And so that was like the first time that I learned about this. Once I learned about it and about the process, I started actually presenting these workshops on how to start business, how to become an entrepreneur as an undocumented student in 2007. So I've been doing this work basically since 2007, and I'm really just one, excited to be sharing this information with you, but also saddened because we're still in this situation. And although I will say that now as a business advisor, as a coach, I do encourage everyone, even those who have, secure jobs, to think about entrepreneurship. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is going to come from that space and that personal experience. I was able to pay for college before, and I didn't mention this, but I live in California, and I was raised in California, so since I was 9. And so we do have a lot of options here, but when I was going to school, we didn't have a lot of options. The only thing we had was in-state tuition through AB 540, Assembly Bill 540. And so when I was going to school, that wasn't an option. I know many of you who are in states where there aren't a lot of options, or many of you who didn't qualify for the DACA program, or, so the information that I'm going to be providing is actually information that is going to apply to all of you. Hopefully you'll get, something that is going to be of use to you. So this is not legal advice. This is my little preliminary, what is it called? Just, warning. This is not legal advice, and this is for informational purposes only. Okay. So just wanted to share that with you. And so what we're going to do today, we're going to define what a career is, because when I was in college, and I know many of my clients, so I'm also a career coach for undocumented students. A lot of my students, and even like early year professionals, like they don't necessarily know the difference between a job and a career. So we're going to define that. So I think that's going to be really key in you understanding and wanting and feeling inspired to do different things that are kind of not what we would traditionally do. So you have to ask the key question in order to, move forward with your career and decide what you want to do. And we're going to uncover 5 career building options for undocumented students. Then we're going to learn how to get started, because I'm not going to leave you out in the cold, just like, oh, there's all of these options. Well, I also going to provide some resources that I found really helpful, and that you might also find really helpful. Okay. I always try to be as practical as possible. I don't want to go over like a lot of, theory. I talk from experience myself, and then other students and entrepreneurs that I've worked with that were also undocumented, formally undocumented, or have DACA, or so that's like my frame of reference when I'm teaching these workshops. So let's define career. Whenever we think of okay, what am I going to do with this degree? And that was a huge question for me as I was going through each level of formal education that I have. It was always like, okay, what am I going to do with this? What is a career, right? So when you think of a career, you actually are thinking about not just one time in your life, like the year after you graduate. It's really a lifetime of experiences. And I think one of the things that we forget oftentimes is that a career is not just one job. And one of the most common things that I find that I asked myself before I knew what a career was, and that a lot of students get really nervous about, is like not finding a job, right? And so when I think about a career, what career really entails, I think of these definitions, right? Career is an occupation undertaken by a significant period of a person's time and with opportunities for progress, right? So it's not a job. There's like the word job is not even on here. A career is a variety of experiences that you have undertaken throughout your life. As you gain more experience in the worlds of work and life, you're building your career. Okay,
Karla,
yes.
Karla, sorry to interrupt, but your video is lagging a bit. If you want to try maybe muting your video.
Sure. Let me stop video. How about now?
So far, so good.
Okay, so let me just continue. So as you gain experience, so whenever you're thinking about starting your career and whenever you're thinking about actually building your career, it's actually a set of experiences. So what I'm trying to say is don't get stuck in that, in not being able to find a job right now. And I know that makes a lot of us nervous. I know it made me very nervous, right? In my, while I was going to college, like, how am I going to get that internship, that one job, that one, opportunity? Well, I'm going to tell you so many ways that you can actually start building your career and earn money. So your career path takes account of your education, training, and paid and unpaid work. Okay. So it's a set of different things, including what you're doing right now, which is working towards your formal education. Okay. And completing that degree. So the difference between a job and career, as I mentioned, is that the main difference is that a job is something you do regularly for money, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't want us to get that confused, right? The other thing is that there's the practicality or the situation that if you are out there seeking for a job, there's a very traditional way of going about it, right? And that's like looking for a job post that most likely says that you need legal authorization to be able to work, right? And that you're going to need to submit a job application with a social security number, a copy of your passport and green card, and all of these things. So it can be really, really scary and intimidating to think outside of that because everybody's doing it all over classmates, maybe all of our, the classmates that don't have to struggle with the immigration issues, maybe even, some of our cousins, some of, the people around us, like they're kind of quote unquote having a little bit more simple, but I don't want us to get stuck there. And that's one thing that I can tell you that I did in my career that made a world of difference. And that's that I did not get stuck thinking that I was going to fit into a job. Okay. And that I needed to actually get a job. And I get a lot of students and a lot of clients that actually get stuck there. Okay. And I don't want you to get stuck there, even when you do adjust status. Okay. And so, whereas that career is a long-term endeavor, something you build towards on a day-to-day basis, right? And you work on every day. So again, don't get stuck in I can't get a job because I'm undocumented and sabotage your career. Okay, because you can still have a career. You want to ask yourself a key question. Do you aspire to be an employee or a professional with a solid career? I can tell you that I didn't get papers until 2019, and I had a solid career starting, I started my solid career in 2007. And you can do that too, okay? So that's really important. So how do you get started? And actually, I want to take a moment right now to see if any of you have any questions about what I just talked about. So I'm sure, there's a lot of probably thoughts that are going through your mind. But if any of you have any questions right now, would be a good time. You can either put them in the chat. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, again, you are totally welcome to put questions in the chat. So how do you get started, right? Also, many of you might be asking yourself, can undocumented people even dream of having a career? Yes, of course you can. Absolutely. And you should. It's your right. And you're working really hard towards that degree. So why not? And some of you might just be, very overwhelmed thinking like, what is it that I'm going to do next? Right. And then of course, we watch the news and we find out, all of the uncertainty that goes around DACA, and then just having all of that information, that brings us a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. Sometimes we put a lot of energy towards that, and we don't put a lot, we sometimes get distracted and we don't focus on the things that we can actually control, right? And I know it happened to me a lot of the time. So now I'm going to go over 5 career building options for undocumented students. And this is where I think a lot of you might have questions. So I do want to have you, just like, I'll take a moment and I'll pause throughout the presentation to make sure that I'm addressing your question, because I don't want you to forget. And so it's going to be, I think I would say that all of these options, these 5 options that I'm going to present, actually apply to all of you. And I would say that you could try, I would recommend that you try all of them, if not, 2 or 3 of them. And the first one is actually entrepreneurship. Okay, so setting up an enterprise or business. There's some examples of that: a restaurant owner, web designer, agency owner, attorney with your own practice. Because currently, US law, meaning for the whole entire country, does not prohibit undocumented immigrants from owning a business. Okay, you do, however, have to check your state and local laws for any specific residency, business location, and requirements. Also, I want to make a note here that you do not have to disclose your status with anyone if you don't feel safe doing so. And this is a question that I get in my workshops, right? Like, is there anywhere where you have to, select your residency or citizenship on any of these applications where it's required. So here's the thing. You actually, a lot of this information, unless, you know, it's a federal requirement, I have yet to see an application to file for example, a business license or some sort of, you know, to register your business name where it asks you any of that, right? And so if that is the case, for example, if you decide, you know what, I am going to open up a business, I'm going to actually, you know, maybe you're really passionate about social media or photography, and you decide, you know what, I actually do want to open up my own business. Or maybe, you know, my mom has been really just talking about opening up a restaurant or a food cart or anything like that, but we want to register and we want to, you know, we want to be able to create a legitimate business and file taxes and do all of that. You can do all of that process without actually having to disclose, you know, that you are undocumented. So you want to just be mindful, and I'm happy, you know, to review any of the applications with you. If you send me an email and you're like, you know, Karla, we really want to do this, I want to fill out the application, you know, I'm happy to review them with you. I've seen a lot of them. And so most of the time they're not going to ask you that. If not, you know. And the other thing is, like I said, you do not have to tell anyone that you're undocumented if you don't feel safe. But here's the one thing that I will tell you: do follow your state and local laws. Okay, if there's a lot of different types of laws that, you know, govern over business ownership. Some of those might be labor laws, right? Some of those might be zoning laws. Like, you know, I had a client that I met with today who who signed a lease at a place that where they didn't actually were not able to set up a retail store. It was actually zoned for something different. So those little things are going to happen, and it does take work. But I'll tell you, entrepreneurship is going to be one of those ways in which you can earn income and actually have a lot of professional experience, because you're doing something for yourself and you're providing a service that is of value. Okay, so I'm going to take a moment to look at some of your questions. And so I want to take a look, because I know some of you are going to be asking, that are wondering the same question, but you may not be asking it. Okay, so and I'm not going to say who's asking it, just because this is a recording and I want to make sure that you maintain some confidentiality. So what is the difference between a professional and an employee? Great question. I aspire to complete a doctoral degree, but want to start postdoc life working with someone else. Does this mean that I am any less of a professional? Absolutely not. So a professional is somebody who has experience, right, in that field, has some form of education. So people who are professionals in a specific field have experience, education, training, I never said a job. Like you not having had an official job does not make you any less of a professional if you've had the experience doing that kind of work. Okay. An employee is someone who works for somebody else for a salary, or for a salary, or on a per hour basis. So an employee would be somebody who actually is employed by somebody else, right? And that is the difference between a professional and an employee. So a professional doesn't necessarily have to be an employee. So let me give you the example of an attorney, right? And so there's like different laws, and I just want to acknowledge that there's different laws throughout the state about who can get a license to practice law and who cannot. So depending on their legal status. But for example, somebody who is an attorney may decide that right after law school, right, and maybe they've had experience volunteering at all of these organizations, and they feel confident enough to start their own business as a attorney. They're not going to be employed by anybody else. They're going to be practicing by themselves. They're still a professional, but they're not employed by somebody else. I hope that made sense. So you can still be a professional without being an employee. Okay, so do you happen to know more about online businesses and how they differ from storefront-like businesses? You can have both, and the difference is that one, if you run an online business, you don't have a storefront. Like your storefront is your website. And this is the other thing, like this is a great question, and I want to encourage all of you to learn, even if it's by watching a couple of YouTube videos about what building an online business is about, because that's the way of the future, right? And actually the future is now. It's all happening now. I run my business online. Like I don't do any workshops in person. So all of my business is online. I don't have inventory, right? But a storefront would be like if I had an office. So that's the difference. Like if you actually have a brick and mortar space, that is a storefront. That is an actual physical space. But an online, like Amazon doesn't have any brick and mortars where you can go shop. I lied. They did try doing that actually in some places, but that's the difference. Basically, your operations are the back end where no customers actually come into contact with your with your operations, but with a storefront, then somebody can actually come into shop. So that's the difference. Okay, I think that's more of a question. What form are we supposed to receive? I don't know. A career is more of a long-term life plan. Yeah, your career is more long-term, right? What about options for present-day financial needs as an undergrad student? I think entrepreneurship could be one of those options. You don't have to start a multi-million-dollar company as a student, right? You can start, I know, and I don't like using this word, but I'm going to use it, side hustle, right? That would still make you an entrepreneur, right? And I'll be honest with you, my first business, even before consulting, kind of embarrassed to say this, but I was actually the assistant to a DJ. And I got a stipend being the assistant to a DJ that would go to clubs. I don't think I was even old enough to go to clubs or had the ID necessary to actually get in. So there's so many different ways. And I know, for example, some of my colleagues that were also undocumented before DACA happened, some of them would be folks who worked in marketing, right? Again, and so I had one colleague who gave out samples. Like she was hired by small businesses and like companies to give out samples at the store. So that was her business, her side hustle, right? And she said, I could make like $300 in one night just giving out all of these samples. So starting a business takes time, skill, and sometimes startup capital. Are there other options for making money that we can start now? Sure, I'm going to mention a few of them in a minute, but if you want to do something that is not going to take effort, I don't have an answer. A lot of these are going to take effort in the same way that it would take effort for you to, be at a job if that was an option. But I do think that some of these are great options if you find the right thing that works for you. You're interested in studying digital arts. I still have the opportunity to work at a studio, or is it better to work as independent? I think if you have the opportunity to do both and have an experience in studio and take on work as independent, then do both. Like if that's an option, for sure. Yeah. So so that's some of the things. I'm going to give you resources for how to educate yourself regarding some of the local and state laws. Okay, great. So let's continue on. So make sure that you always abide by other laws that apply to business owners, permits, health codes, labor laws. Those are still going to apply to you regardless of your status. Once you become a business owner, these laws actually, apply to you. So if your state has restrictive laws, policies where you're like, I'm actually can't start a business, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, you can go the Elon Musk route and set up headquarters in a different state or start an online business. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways in which you can start a business and actually build something for yourself as you continue your education. Okay. And this is very important. And I know there's going to be actually a workshop on this. So I'm not going to touch on the questions about ITINs and taxes and any of this stuff. But I will say this. It is your responsibility as a person who lives in the US that earns money to file your taxes and pay the IRS. And so once you start earning money with any of these ways that I'm talking about, you want to be able to do that. And I don't know if any of you have, some of you probably have this, maybe you have family members or you just became curious about the process. But to get permanent residency and for any immigration benefit, they're going to ask if you filed your taxes. Okay, so if you're earning money, once you start earning money through your business or an internship or not internship, through your business, a consultancy, any of these types of ways that I'm mentioning, you need to pay the IRS. And this is really important. And I will share with you that for the first 4 years of me running my business, I did a terrible job of actually following through with keeping track of my expenses, making sure that I file my taxes. And it was one of the most stressful experiences of my life because the IRS will know that you're earning money eventually. Okay. And so you don't want to be hiding from the IRS. And you also don't want to be in a situation where you put yourself, once the opportunity opens up to be able to gain permanent residency, you have back taxes that you haven't paid. And this is really, really important. Okay. But I won't go into the details about all of that because I know there's going to be a workshop with regards to this, to this topic. Okay. Okay. So the other way that you can launch your career, start your career, grow your career and your skill set is by starting something. So becoming the creator of something, launching something. And this is, like I said, one of my first professional jobs was actually starting the first Dreamer Center, right? And so the amount of skills and networking that I did, it just like propelled my career. And you can do that too within your department at school, within your community, right? Within like the spaces that where you're at, where you feel, passionate about something. I think it would be an extremely important thing for you to do, especially as as you're thinking about starting a career before you graduate. And that's the other thing. Depending on what community you live in. So I grew up in Silicon Valley, okay? So there was a lot of competition. Like having a master's degree, a bachelor's degree wasn't that impressive in a place like Silicon Valley because there were so many people with bachelor's and master's degrees. What helped me progress in my career was the fact that I was doing all of these extra things, of course, and while I was going to school. So now at first I didn't make money off of starting a Dreamer Center, right? But then I added so much value to this project that they offered me money to continue doing it, right? So you need little to no money to get started. And once it offers value, you can leverage this value for money. Okay. And that's the whole point of this. So if you learn, for example, you start an organization, maybe you start a club, maybe you start a class, right? And then you figure out, you know what, I could actually charge for this. Okay. For you to be able to have that as an option. Okay. So I'm gonna look at and see what other questions I could answer. I'm not going to answer questions about taxes and ITIN numbers, but in order to start a business, I will say you only need a tax ID number according to the IRS. Okay, but check your local. Usually, even your local business licenses only require you to use either an ITIN number or a social security number. I want to pursue a developer job, but most of them require at least a bachelor's job. I think you mean a bachelor's degree. Which option would you recommend to gain experience in the meantime? Okay, if a developer, as in a developer of apps or like a software engineer / developer, create something of value so you can actually have a portfolio. That is going to help you stand out. And that this is for all of you, regardless of what degree you're actually going out there to, you're working towards, you can actually start something in that field, and it's going to help you stand out, right? To be able to gain experience, have your career, and have a solid career. So after opening your own business and then paying taxes, what are some important things you need to be on top of the queue to business going legally? Make sure that you renew your licenses if you've gotten licenses. Make sure that you are taking courses. I'm going to talk a little bit about them in a minute. So taking courses to learn more about what business policies are out there. Apply for funding. If you want to grow your business, definitely think about that. Yeah. What if you're not interested in business but want something? Okay, I think I don't fully understand that question. So you don't have to start a business. This is the other option, but you still would need to create something new. What I'm saying is, like, you can't expect to just have a degree and for that to give you all kinds of opportunities, right? Because regardless of your status, you're still going to be competing with a lot of people, that did start things when they were in college. Maybe they did have this professional experience, through actually having done other than just get a degree. Okay. Yes. So an example of this would be like a personal trainer. Exactly. So let's say you're really passionate about, about fitness. Maybe you're not studying anything about fitness, but you're passionate about it. To get through school, maybe that is something that you actually do on the weekends, right? So that might be an option. So do you need to have a certificate for certain services? For certain services, yes, but not a lot of things. There's plenty of things that you do not need to have certificate for. So like I've been doing people's makeup for money. Yes, that's a big thing. I had a friend quit her job because she was making more money as a makeup artist and working way less than at her job. Yeah. So okay, so well, if you don't want to start a business, that's fine. I think that's totally, it's not for everybody, but you do need to start something in order to get your career going. The other option is this. So let's say for you, money is not an issue. Maybe you've got your tuition covered. Maybe you've got, a stipend, or maybe, your expenses are low. You just want to focus on school. Here's the thing. Again, you do not want to have just your degree on your resume when you finish school. Okay. What you want to have is for you to show that you have also done other things. And ideally, it would be things that actually add value to a business, to other people, to communities, because that is marketable. And by marketable, I mean you can actually sell it. Okay. So volunteer, offering your time for free at a nonprofit organization. That's what I mean when I say volunteer. Social media marketing for an organization in your industry. Maybe you're starting public relations or marketing. Maybe you're studying, anything you're studying in a field or research, for example. Maybe you volunteer at an organization that actually, needs that service, is going to give you the opportunity to be able to have that as an option. So here's what I want to kind of discourage you from doing is just volunteering at an organization, doing the same thing for 9 months. And that same thing might be, and this I've seen on resumes, right? Like, oh, well, I distributed food for the homeless for 6 months. Okay, that's great. I think it's an awesome thing to do. Like, that's great. However, as a actual skill set, what else did you do? Did you help organize volunteers, right? Like, you need to think about how this is going to look on your LinkedIn profile, on a resume. And I talk about resumes because you do need to think about resume. And me as a consultant, I still need to sometimes provide my resume of how much experience I've had. So you want to be able to think strategically, like you want to offer your time for free, but also learn a skill. I would say stay long enough to build a relationship with a mentor within the organization. Okay. I have had a situation where I used to volunteer at this nonprofit when I was in high school. I think I was a senior. and I volunteered there. And I always remember having a positive experience there. When I went back years later to apply for a job, I actually, well, that was like my first job when I got DACA. But I actually said, hey, this is just so, amazing that I get to work here. And I even did consulting work with them. So I started building that relationship, stayed in touch with some of the folks. And that made it really interesting for me to be able to have that as an experience and to be able to share. So what I'm saying is stay long enough to build a relationship with a mentor within the organization to build your network. And sometimes organizations can't afford to hire full-time employees, or they don't want to, right? They don't necessarily need that, but sometimes they need somebody to manage the project. So they might be open to hiring contractors, which is something that you would be able to do. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, even as an undocumented person, okay? Okay, so does volunteering at your local church works? Yeah, I think anywhere you want to volunteer is great. I would say be more concerned about the title of the volunteering position, right? You want to give yourself a title if they have a title, like a professional title that you could get, not just volunteer. So maybe you are food pantry coordinator, right? Or maybe you are social media marketing coordinator. Like there is, just because it's not paid doesn't mean they can't give you, or you can't give yourself an actual title with an actual like job description, because usually that's, and you want to go with an organization that actually provides like solid training for their volunteers as well. Okay, is this making sense? I can't see you guys, so I don't know what the reaction. That's the only hard part about doing this. Most businesses fail. What tips would you give to improve the odds of success? Understand money. And you're right, most businesses fail, but you have to understand your finances and get help, okay? You can actually, and there's a few organizations that I'm gonna recommend that I found super helpful. I even work with them as a consultant. I think they are great. Now there's so much content on the internet about how you can become a successful business owner. Here's the other thing. Let's say you decide, you know what, well, I have to become a business owner and, I'm just going to do it for the money. Well, you figure out what is going to work for you as far as a business owner. Maybe you only work, a few weekends a month with X, Y, and Z business that you have. You don't have to be super like bogged down by it. So you have to figure out what business actually is going to work for you and your lifestyle, especially the fact that you have a degree to complete. Please do not, not complete your degree. Do go to school. It's really important. Okay. So let me take a look at a few other questions. Yeah, so the point of this presentation, and I know some of you have this question. Until federal policy changes, for most jobs, most jobs that require legal residency or a work permit, you're gonna need that. These are other options like that I'm presenting to you so that you can start your career, earn some money that don't require you to go through that process, okay? And I get it, it's frustrating. It's frustrating and it's unfair. And also you gotta think about the things that you can actually control, okay? Otherwise, I don't want you to be, and I have this, like I have students and I coach for a college, and I've had students who have been in college for 7 years because they have not figured out that, whoever their boss is, whether they work for another business that is paying them under the table, or however they ended up working, actually doesn't care about their education, right? And their educational career. So if you think about really having a solid career, you want to be able to focus on the things that you can actually control, right? So that's really important. And this is something that you can control, and it's going to pay off financially. Not if you just have a degree. Like the degree is not going to give you opportunities, especially with the limitations that you already have given the status, okay? Now, the other option is also becoming a consultant. And this is for those folks, those of you who have a little bit more professional experience already. And those of you who have a specialized skill, ability, or process that is of value to a specific group of people. Okay, so you have become an expert in a field and can advise others. And I see somebody asking a question, is anyone pursuing to be a financial advisor of sorts? And there's also different, and so that would be an option, right? Like that would be an actual way for you to have an opportunity to provide a service, right? You get, maybe depending on the laws within your state, but you can actually be a certified financial coach, right? Somebody who it provides financial advice and coaching to different people. Maybe you do it online and now you have the entire world as your market, right? So you want to think about what options there are. And being a translator is also a really great option. Maybe you're really great at translating because you've been doing it for your parents. I know for me, it was like always the case, right? Like, excuse me, I translated for my mom whenever we would go anywhere. And so that might be a skill that you actually turn into money, right? So some examples of that would be fundraising for colleges and universities, product design, prototyping, translating, interpreting, financial consulting, maybe design, the website designer, maybe you just really love social media and you spend a lot of time on it, and now it's time for you to capitalize on all of those hours spent on social media. You can actually do that by charging businesses, maybe Spanish-speaking business owners in your area. There's a huge market to be tapped there, and you charge a fee for it. Okay, so
I'm confused.
your professional network is going to be key in helping you start and stay in business. Yes. Oh, I love hearing voices. Tell me, what are you confused about?
What are we going to be charging these businesses for specifically?
For social media, what I just mentioned. So even setting up their social media accounts. There's businesses who don't know how to set up like business owners who don't know or don't have time to set up their business, their social media accounts, right? And let's say you're really good at social media and you're like, oh, I could totally do this. Well, you take a course online, or maybe you do it, you try trial and error, and you help somebody, but you're going to charge a fee for it. Do you see what I'm saying? So you might say, you know what, for $500, I will set up your Facebook page, take pictures of your products. I would also, maybe set up your social media, your Instagram, and, and post on TikTok for you. And then that's going to be $500 a month. Do you see what I'm saying? So you want to start thinking about the skills and abilities that you have and how you can turn this into a service for somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
Okay. Yes. And here's the thing. I mean, I think even for those, this applies for anyone who's coming out of college right now. We want to be able to be entrepreneurial because job security, it was a thing of the past, right? Like I remember thinking, and I knew some people who had spent 30, 40 years at the same job, but that's very rare. Even for people who have papers, okay? Like that's no longer a thing that actually is the norm. It's no longer the norm. Now it's about doing the things that actually add value to communities, to people, to individuals, to groups of people, right? And so you want to think of your career as that, like what adds value to other people. And here's the thing, many of us actually have this idea that we don't deserve to earn money, but the reality is that you do deserve to earn money, and you do deserve to actually earn a lot of money so that you can have a good quality of life, right? And you're working so hard towards this degree, and that's amazing, but you also want to have the opportunity to do great work and provide a service and have the kind of professional and career career that you want to have. And sometimes that means doing a few different things at a time, okay? Including maybe providing services as a consultant. Somebody kept asking about investing. Please do think about this, okay? So there's a few things, and this is something that you can actually do research on what specific tool of investment you're going to use, okay? But when I think about as an investor, I think about putting money into financial plans, businesses, or property with the expectation of achieving a profit, right? And note that I said expectation and not guarantee, because an investor and a business owner is always going to have risk. So an examples of this would be buying your first apartment, right? Investing in crypto, the stock market, in a business someone else is going to run, okay? So these are examples, and I don't want to say, I know most of you are still in college right now. If not all of you are still in college right now, it's totally fine. I want you to really think about your future and your financial future. And investing is actually one of those things that you can actually do and think about doing. And, and actually, yeah, like this is one of the ways in which you're going to build generational wealth, okay? And I will share that I only have one regret in life, and that is not buying myself a house in the early 2000s and in mid 2000s in Silicon Valley, because they were really cheap. And now they're very expensive, basically anywhere in California. I would have had $500,000 in equity at least had I bought my first apartment. But I knew there were barriers. There was still like the imposter syndrome. I didn't really understand. There was a lot of uncertainty in my life. So I understand where all of this comes from. But I want to encourage you to think about that, right? Like investing is one of those things that you can actually do. It could be as simple as opening up a Roth IRA, and Google search what a Roth IRA is, but it's a investment vehicle. So you can think about that. So there's different ways in which you can do that. So make sure to use reputable agencies to help you with this process. Okay, so I'm not endorsing any of these. Again, this is not legal or financial advice, but I do want you to think about these things because time is on your side. Okay, so make sure to abide by all laws ruling that investment tool. Okay, I'm going to take a look at some of the questions. How can we get started investing? It depends, right? But I would say even looking at what your bank to see what savings accounts options there are and what retirement accounts there are available, okay? And here's the thing, you can always ask, what happens if I have to leave the country? You don't have to tell them your situation, right? So what would happen to my money if I had to leave the country? How could I get access to it, right? So you can do them through the website Coursera, and you can sign up, only pay $49. Yes, so there's a lot of courses. Okay, I can't endorse any companies, but I would look into your local credit unions. I'm a big fan of credit unions, so I would look into that. But there's also really great online banks. So it doesn't matter where you live. It just there's online banks that provide Roth IRAs. Okay. You can yes, you can open a brokerage account with an ITIN. Okay. Ameritrade. Okay, so maybe somebody is talking from experience. Okay, so what about careers that offer a sponsorship for work authorization? How does that work? I'm gonna be honest. I was gonna say your name, so I'm gonna be honest. I don't have information on that on this presentation. I'm going to refer you out to somebody else to be able to find that information. So for sponsorship. Usually what happens though, they have their own, so the companies have their own attorneys to help you with that process. So even if you're not, you can still invest. This is America. You can still invest. Just make sure to pay your taxes. That's what they want. I try to finish school over 10 years. Yes. Okay, learn a lot. Great. Yes. So you're going to have a lot of different experiences, and you want to be able to combine them and be able to talk about them in so many different ways. Okay, so you do want to be able to have all of these experiences. And also it comes down to skill set. You know, like you, and one of the things that I wanted to say is, you know, your story and you sharing your story is going to be important, but at the same time, you have to bring something of value to, and by a value, I mean a skill set, something that other people are actually going to, somebody's going to pay for and give and do an exchange with you for, right? And so, because that's the way our economy runs, that's the way it works. So you want to be able to do that. So that's going to be really, you know, really the key in everything that I'm saying. Like, you want to build these skills. You want to be able to have a variety of experiences that you can translate into money. Okay. And some of these things you might do on a regular basis, and some of these you might do just a few, you know, years or a few months. There was a time where I wasn't doing workshops for a while, but then, you know, this is the thing that I always come back to because I love it. I really want to encourage you to do, to have not just rely on waiting for the government to decide whether or not you can, you know, have a job. Like, you need to be able to have control over your future. And these are some ways in which you can do that. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to provide value to a community, to a group of people, to individuals that will pay for that. Okay. And so I know we're almost close out of time, but do feel free to continue asking your questions. And then I want to show you a few examples, not examples, a few resources that actually have that I've used, and I would strongly encourage you to use. I did see a question. I have tried every form of investment. It always requires an ITIN or social security number. Yes, thank you for saying that. Yes, so there is a reason for that. And there is, I mean, so you need to have an ITIN number, okay? So if you don't have one, you need to get one, because that is going to be really important if you want to do most of these things, or any of these things except for volunteering. But you're going to need to have an ITIN number, so an individual tax identification number, because when you're receiving money, right, let's say through your investment, let's say you invest in you know, in a vehicle that is actually giving you a return every year, you need to be able to file taxes, and they need to be able to send you a form that says, hey, you know, Karla earned X amount of money with us. She, you know, through her investment account. So she needs to pay, you know, she needs to file this with her taxes. That is the reason they always require an ITIN number. When there's going to be an exchange of money, you are going to need to, you know, be able to file your taxes. And that is why you're going to need an ITIN. Okay. Could somebody be paid for volunteering? No, you can't, because that would not be volunteering. So there might be a stipend, you know, available, but yeah, I mean, technically, I guess you could be paid, but I don't know that I would call it volunteering, right? So it's usually when the service is free, but sometimes what will happen is that you might get a stipend for, I don't know, mileage reimbursement or whatnot. So you might be asked for an ITIN number. Okay, so here is, can we own real estate with just an ITIN? Great question. So check your local rules, and I would say ask at least 5 different realtors, because it's very likely that they have figured out a way to help undocumented folks own property in your state. Now, if you can't own it in your state, you might be able to own property outside of your state. And that might be a great option as well as an investment. Okay. Okay. Okay, if you want to start a business, an online business selling shirts that I customize myself, where do I start? I am going to tell you right now. So those of you who are like, you know what, I do have a business idea, I could totally do this. I am inspired. Here is a resource. Okay, so how to get started. Take a deep breath. It's a journey, not a destination. Choose one of two of the points that I have mentioned and take action. Learn the basics of networking. You want to meet people, and you don't have to tell people that you're undocumented. Nobody really needs to know that until you're ready to tell them and you feel safe. Learn about the regulations from reputable sources. You have no idea how many people are like, I didn't know I could own a business in California because my uncle tried and he didn't know how to do it. Well, here's the thing, your uncle maybe didn't find the right resource. Okay, so definitely have your what is it called? Reputable resources. Plug into entrepreneurship spaces and stay informed, but do not allow it to take away your energy or drive or inspiration. Stop watching the news every day and stop talking to people who watch the news every day and get freaked out. You still have to build your career. That's why you're going to school. Okay. So here's the resources. Number one, the Small Business Development Center and Small Business Administration. You are not required to be a U.S. citizen to receive services. Why is this line here? I don't know. So you are not required to be a U.S. citizen to receive services from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Now, there are programs, federal programs that require citizenship in order to receive loans and grants and things like that. But services, most of the time, you can actually, receive online services or get take some of their classes to be able to have all of this. And I'm actually going to give you this slide so that you can actually have this information available. So this is the SBA. Here's the thing: a lot of people, including folks who were documented, received that own businesses. I have a close friend of mine, it's just like a sister to me. She runs a multi-million-dollar staffing agency. I'm very proud of her. And she received PPP money. And then PPP funds were a program that provided money when the pandemic happened. Because she had formalized her business, she had all of this information available. So there are a lot of resources out there, okay? So the SBA is a nationwide agency, and the Small Business Administration, but they're kind of linked, so I just put them in one link. That's where you find your local one. Then your local and affinity chambers of commerce. Chambers of commerce also provide a lot of training, a lot of resources, a lot of opportunities for small business owners or those aspiring to become business owners. Now, somebody asked, where do I find a volunteer experience? Volunteermatch.com, your college campus or career resource center, your college's entrepreneurship center or college of business, and of course, Immigrants Rising's Spark program. That is another specific for undocumented students. Make sure to check them out. Super awesome resource, okay? There is a lot of information out there. You just need to decide that you want to build your career. Okay, and that is it for me. Please check out my website, karlareyes.com. Check me out on LinkedIn, Karla Reyes Noguera, or on Instagram at Karla Reyes MBA. Okay.
Thank you so much, Karla, for presenting today. We appreciate your time and expertise. For those of you that are interested, Karla will be doing our next session this Thursday on developing an entrepreneurial mindset. It will be at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So hopefully we will see you all there. Thank you, everyone. And look out for the link to this recording on the Dream.Us YouTube channel. All right, take care.
Thank you.